26 years ago, the first console created by the electronics giant Sony hit the scene, and it's not an exaggeration to say that the world would never be the same. On December 3rd, 1994, the PlayStation was released in Japan with a respectable launch, selling 300,000 consoles by the end of the year. This didn't match up to the 500,000 sold by their most direct competitor, the Sega Saturn, so they decided to shake things up for the North American release.
Join me for a brief presentation.
With the Saturn set to retail at $399 in the US, Sony decided to undercut them with a price heard round the world.
$299.
Pair that with some heavy hitters such as Ridge Racer and Tekken to take on Daytona USA and Virtua Fighter, Sony hit the ground running when they finally released in November of 1995. Developers found the PlayStation's RISC architecture easier to work with than the Saturn's VDPs, and new titles quickly flooded Sony's console with legends like Ace Combat, Gran Turismo, and Crash Bandicoot, setting them apart, while later hits such as Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid propelled it to mythic proportions. The game media itself, while still a CD format, set itself apart with a stylish black underside. The first batch of games were released in long boxes that were approximately the same dimensions of Saturn cases, but both eventually switched to the far more economical jewel cases later on. Sony's base controller was a simple affair that seemed to be inspired more by the Super Nintendo than any of its close competitors, which makes sense considering the PlayStation itself was a hair's breadth away from being an add-on for the 4th-gen console in the same vein as the Sega CD. A D-pad, 4 face buttons, start and select, but with 4 shoulder buttons rather than 2, and a form factor that fit into the hand a bit better. Sony tested the waters of analog control early with their imaginatively named analog controller, but eventually compressed this into the most successful peripheral ever made, the DualShock, which would become its standard shape, with minor variations of course, to this day. Another feature I absolutely loved about this generation is the Red Book audio, which I've discussed in more detail in a previous video. But the ability to just pop Wipeout or Tale of the Sun into my CD player and enjoy the music directly was a huge thing for me, and only added value to the games I purchased. Lastly, the memory cards. Since you couldn't save your game directly onto the media like we were used to with cartridges, Sony provided small cards loaded with 128 kilobytes of flash memory, allowing up to 15 blocks of game saves to be stored, though some third-party options used bank switching to store more. Most games only used 1 or 2 blocks, but there were a few that could clog up most, if not all, of your card. Tale of the Sun took 9 blocks, and if you wanted to save everything you did on Saga Frontier, you'd need a full card just for that game. One nifty variation on the memory card was the Japanese-only Pocket Station, which had its very own built-in RISC chip, a small screen, and controls, but functioned otherwise like a normal memory card. Very few games supported it, but some, like Saga Frontier 2 and Final Fantasy VIII, had entire mini-games that could be stored and played away from the console. Afterwards, you could plug back in and import your progress, unlocking more items than you might otherwise be able to get your hands on without the wee beastie. Ultimately, the PlayStation was in production for 11 years, almost through to the release of the PlayStation 3. It sold over 100 million consoles over the course of its run and stands in third place in all-time home console sales, only recently having been passed up by the PlayStation 4. I still love playing games for this 5th-gen classic to this day, and I'm sure you do too. Go ahead and share your memories here in the comments below or on Twitter at TesseractUnfold. And meanwhile, like, subscribe, spread the word, and I'll see you again next week.